It's been 2.5 months since we started Wham Baam Securitycam, and in that time, we've shown you 100 different viewer-submitted security cam videos. This week, we wanted to show you the very best clips we've received so far. Enjoy, and don't forget to subscribe. Watch what happened on what seemed like a quiet day in this Lake City mini storage parking lot. It looks like a sedan hit a white pickup truck, sending it rolling into the lot and into a parked Prius. It rolled several more times before finally coming to a stop, right side up, but severely damaged. The car that had caused the accident continued careening down the road with a destroyed front end. Miraculously, everyone survived the crash. Garrett owns the apartment building this camera is installed on. At around 2:30 a.m. on Christmas Eve, he got a call from one of his tenants. Apparently, someone in a Ford Explorer had been having some fun in the snow when everything went terribly wrong. After he smashed into the brick wall, the driver just sat there for a moment. Finally, they decided to flee the scene without taking responsibility for their actions. Little did they know the cameras were rolling, and they'd even left their license plate behind. Garrett promptly contacted the police, who were later able to track the guy down. They gave him 3 tickets for hit and run, failure to notify police of an accident, and imprudent speed. Garrett already got a quote to fix his building, and we're hoping that guy learned his lesson. Here's another clip in which snowy roads caused some extra trouble. Charlie told us it had been snowing a lot and freezing every night. On the way to run an errand, his Land Rover Discovery lost traction and slid before slamming into the corner of the fence. It then slipped the rest of the way down the driveway. According to Charlie, that Land Rover is the 4th car that has been claimed by this cursed corner. They're still waiting for a repair estimate, but he adds, what an expensive weekend. Watch what happened outside of Ryan's work one night. A driver was about to turn left into the parking lot when the driver behind them decided to floor it in an attempt to pass them. The vehicle flipped over and landed on its roof. Ryan and his coworker were some of the first on the scene. While Ryan was on the phone with 911, one of the ladies from the black car was desperate to get her purse out of it, even when they started to smell leaking gasoline. In the end, everyone was able to walk away from the crash. This submitter's dad had just finished putting out the trash cans. Less than 10 seconds after he walked up the driveway, a blue Dodge Charger smashed into all 3 of their cans, plus a neighbor's. Not only did the reckless driver utterly obliterate the trash cans, the impact sent them flying into one of the submitter's cars. We have to wonder if maybe the driver was distracted by all the Christmas decorations. Of course, you might agree with the submitter's dad's theory. That last submitter's car wasn't the only victim of a drunk driver in today's episode. Ann Aaron's car was parked outside her house one night when, as she puts it, a car tried to use my car as a wheelie ramp. Even though the footage is in black and white, this photo of the damage reveals the color of the offender's vehicle. The force of the impact was enough to push the car forward and put 2 wheels up on the curb. The driver then took off, disappearing into the night. What is with all these impaired drivers? I hope showing videos like this will spread awareness about how dangerous it is to the driver and others. Ryan told us that an elderly man who had forgotten to take his medication attempted to park in the handicapped spot. Instead of stopping, he floored his car right into the front of the building. He attempted to back up, but it appears his car got stuck on the concrete base of the pillar. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but it did cost $4,000 to get the door replaced. William had just purchased a food truck that hadn't been used in 3 years. The first thing he wanted to do was test all the equipment, starting with the griddle. But that didn't go so well, as you'll see. His buddy only got the hair on his arm burnt off, while William thought his hair was on fire. Luckily, there were no serious burns, but I think they might need a little time to cool off. William wanted to shout out his wife, who calmly watched the whole thing. A little too calmly. This happened near Anthony's apartment complex. As his neighbor was arriving, he noticed 2 strangers had followed him through the gate. Wary, he stayed in his car with the doors locked. We can see one of the guys walking behind his vehicle, but when the other guy walked up, things got serious. The guy in the lighter hoodie produced a gun and held it up against the glass, pulling at the door handles with his other hand. Anthony's neighbor acted quickly and threw the car into reverse. Both guys seemed like they were trying to stop him, but Anthony's neighbor didn't slow down and got out of there. At 2 a.m., police arrived and asked to see Anthony's footage. The next day, a detective spoke with him and told him he suspects the guys were also involved in the mugging of an Uber driver just a few streets over. There's a security camera installed on the building where Andre works. It faces an intersection he says is notorious for accidents. This video proves his point. A red pickup driver failed to yield while turning across oncoming traffic. After a car hit the truck, both vehicles spun around 180 degrees. First responders quickly arrived at the scene, but as far as Andre knows, everyone walked away from the collision. He offered this footage to the police, but they didn't need it since the driver of the pickup had admitted fault at the scene. This happened last Mother's Day and also involves an impaired driver. Allegedly, Declan's neighbor's son had been sitting in his car for several hours, relaxing. Suddenly, he floored his car right into Declan's sister's brand new Subaru Impreza. He promptly decided it was time to leave before fleeing the scene. If it hadn't been for Declan's security camera, they would have never known what had happened. A police report was filed, but the guy was never charged with anything. His mom apologized profusely for what happened and made sure everything was taken care of. Declan says he felt bad for her since this happened on Mother's Day of all days. What a terrible Mother's Day gift. All that over a freshly painted fence. Brad co-owns an apartment complex, and this tenant was upset that Brad had painted a fence, which he had permission from the other owner to do. After talking with him, it turned out the tenant thought the camera was pointing too much in his direction, and there were also other issues he was unhappy about. In the end, everything was settled after Brad gave him a formal letter requiring him to pay for a new camera to avoid getting the police involved. See the island in the middle of the street in front of Chris's house? Keep an eye on it. A driver ran over a tree before narrowly missing another one and a parked car. Chris says this happens all the time. He even sent us another clip of a different driver doing the same thing in the opposite direction. In both cases, the drivers carried on like nothing had happened. Check out this garbage truck with some serious attitude. There's gotta be some sort of joke here. Put yours in the comments. Whatever went wrong here, the worker got out and fixed the issue. Nicholas was at work at his family's business at 7:30 a.m. when the driver of a Cadillac suddenly veered across the street and into cars owned by their employees. The force of the impact pushed the first car into the one behind it, and so on down the line, with a total of 4 vehicles being involved in the end. Some of the employees ran out to their damaged cars, and one of them attempted to open the door of the Escalade to see if the driver who'd caused all the mayhem was okay. According to Nicholas, the Cadillac's airbags had deployed. Despite that, the driver backed away from the wreckage and fled the scene, but he left a trail of leaking oil to where he abandoned his vehicle and left on foot. As of the release of this episode, Nicholas still hasn't heard what was going on with the driver, though he has his own suspicions. Jason's security camera had a front row seat to a police chase, or at least the end of one. According to the officers, they'd been chasing a guy driving a stolen SUV. They were keeping their distance when the driver took a curve in the road too fast, losing control on the wet road. The SUV slammed into a parked car, shoving it into a yard while the SUV damaged a garage. The criminal fled on foot as the police closed in. He didn't get very far before officers caught up to him and placed him under arrest. Nobody was injured, and the damage to the car and garage was taken care of by Jason's insurance provider. What do you think caused this? Brian and his family were enjoying dinner and a movie when they heard a loud crunch from the garage. When Brian went to check out the sound, he saw the garage door had been bent inward. It was an extremely cold night, and by the time he got his jacket and boots on to go outside, the delivery vehicle that had caused the damage was pulling out of the driveway. We're not sure what happened, but the driver was completely out of the front seat before the vehicle started moving forward. Did they forget to set the brake? At first, Brian contacted the police and his home insurance provider, but they told him that the process should be handled by the delivery company. After 3 weeks, the company finally agreed to pay for the damage. Brian's extremely thankful he had footage of the incident, or they might not have taken responsibility. Brian has been watching the Wham Bam channels for about a year now, and he says his son Adrian loves our videos. Hey there, Adrian, we hope you like Securitycam too. A pickup truck was backing out of a driveway across from Brian's house at the same time that a Mercedes was coming down the street. Something must have been distracting the Mercedes driver because she drove right into the pickup's rear bumper. The truck's bumper cover has to be replaced, and there was significant damage to the Mercedes as well. 2 people from the house the Mercedes driver had left ran after them while Brian grabbed a broom to clean up the debris in the road. When a police officer arrived on the scene, he promptly called a tow truck to come get the Mercedes. Delevingne's wife was taking their daughter Sarah to swim class. Watch what happened as they were departing. Delevingne's wife says she was sure that Sarah had closed the rear passenger's door before they pulled out. After this happened, Sarah proudly told her dad that Mom crashed the car and we have a wham bam moment. Just for that, we've got to give her a shout out. Thanks for the submission, Sarah. Delevingne says that unfortunately, this isn't the only accident they've had in the Tesla, and he's now on a first-name basis with the guys at his local body shop. Bobby and his wife had just arrived at work when they got a frantic call from their 2 boys about a stranger on their porch. The stranger opened the outer door, but after he couldn't go any farther, he tried ringing the doorbell. Next, he started being generally disruptive and creepy. He even tried to look through one of the windows. Bobby told his boys to call 911 while his wife began rushing home. She arrived at the same time as the police. The man was taken away for a psychiatric evaluation, but technically he wasn't arrested. 2 weeks later, the same man returned, but thankfully Bobby was home at the time. This time, the guy was arrested for harassment and stalking. Unfortunately, Bobby was told that the charges would likely be dropped due to his mental health issues. On a lighter note, Bobby wants to shout out his sons Jesse and Hunter for being very brave during this incident. Good job, guys! Bobby also said they all love watching the Wham Bam channels together. Jesse was attempting to hook up a trailer when he admits he made a costly mistake. He didn't think he needed to back up anymore and decided to move the trailer the rest of the way by hand. Unfortunately, the trailer got away from him and shattered his SUV's rear window. After making an insurance claim, he was able to get the glass replaced and the dents fixed. Okay, it looks like the Honda bump has found its way over to Wham Baam Securitycam as well. Edward told us this driver crashed into his broccoli pizza and pasta franchise that was still under construction. After the accident, the woman ran away, but she neglected to take her purse with her and the police used the contents to identify her. According to Edward, she was found and fined by the cops. Edward told us his son Joed loves our channels and helped him submit this video. Thanks for sending us this channel's first Honda bump. Check out what happened in this video sent to us by Carlos. A pickup driver was making a wide left turn when the driver of a car tried to speed past him. According to Carlos, the insurance providers found the pickup driver at fault. Carlos offered his security cam footage to the drivers involved, but only the pickup driver wanted a copy of it. Junior received a disturbing call from a neighbor in the middle of the night telling him his car's front and rear windows had both been smashed. Nothing appeared to be stolen, so he watched his security cam footage. Check out what he found. Not only did the vandals smash his car's windows, they also threw rocks at his uncle's windows, breaking one. Police were called to the scene. They showed up about an hour later to take a report. Junior thinks he knows who the vandals were. Since this incident, Junior and his uncle park their cars behind a locked gate at the back of their driveway. Alan sent us a crazy encounter he caught on his personal critter cam. A deer was drinking out of a water trough when, out of nowhere, it was attacked by an owl. Apparently, the owl swooped in from the neighbor's roof, but only scared off the deer without injuring it. Owls can be extremely territorial, so be careful out there, Alan. Alan told us that there's a water shortage where he lives right now, so he put out the trough for the local wildlife. Wham bam, that's awesome, man. Good looking out. Dylan's Miata was in a parking lot while he was at work one rainy night. Apparently, the Jeep driver had been looking for somewhere to park, and according to him, Dylan's car was too small for him to see in the bad weather. I'm sorry, but how did he manage to hit the only vehicle in the entire parking lot? The Jeep driver agreed to pay for the damage without Dylan needing to involve the police. Fixing the Miata cost $2,000 US. Here's a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. You'll see what we mean. A driver turning out of a parking lot failed to see another vehicle coming down the road they were turning onto. The other vehicle swiped the turning car, forcing it into the opposing lane where it hit Ben's RAV4 head-on. Ben's SUV was pushed backward into his coworker's Jeep, but it didn't stop there. The force of the impact was enough to shove the Jeep into another coworker's Nissan. In total, 5 cars were damaged in the accident. Ben's car was totaled while his coworker's vehicles were able to be fixed. Initially, the turning driver fled the scene. When she came back later, she blamed the driver she'd cut off for running her off the road. Ben used this security cam footage as evidence to get her insurance provider to pay $13,000 US for his totaled SUV. Unfortunately, the driver who'd hit the turning driver fled the scene and was never found. This submitter was working from home when he heard tires screeching outside his house. After pulling a U-turn and nearly hitting a parked pickup, an SUV stopped at the end of his cul-de-sac and 3 people piled out. One of them ran through our submitter's yard as well as a neighbor's. When our submitter saw this happening, he assumed the people were going to abandon their vehicle, but then the guy ran back. By this time, our submitter had decided to go outside to get a better look at the vehicle and license plates. 2 of the individuals walked over and spoke with him, but he told us they weren't making much sense. Realizing the potential danger of a 3-against-1 altercation, our submitter casually walked away. It looks like he snapped a photo of the SUV as he left. Eventually, they all got back in the Escalade and took off. Not long after, the police came driving through looking for them. Apparently, they'd been driving through fences and yards and damaging other property. Our submitter wondered why that one guy had gone running through his and his neighbor's yards, so he decided to investigate. Check out what he found stashed next to a shed behind some bushes. Our submitter called the police non-emergency number and reported his discovery. An officer quickly responded and collected the evidence. Our submitter was asked to identify the suspect after he was arrested. He also provided copies of all his security cam videos. The suspect pled guilty to a weapons charge, among others, and is now serving a 5-year prison sentence. Our submitter told the police he works in the data forensics industry. One of the cops said, of all the places in town, they picked the absolute worst. If you look closely, you can see a driver outside of Beltran's house decide to make a U-turn, but that turned out to be a very bad decision. A pickup hit the back of the vehicle and lost control, smashing into Beltran's gate and taking out one of his awning supports. Police were called to the scene, and insurance claims were filed for both vehicles. Unfortunately, Beltran told us his property will have to be repaired out of his own pocket. This is why you shouldn't make illegal U-turns. If you thought that driver was bad, the next one's even worse. Jack wasn't at work when his workplace's security cam caught a driver losing control and smashing into a fence and sign, barely missing a pickup that was pulling out. Apparently, the driver had taken a corner too fast. Jack's coworkers told him emergency services arrived within 5 minutes and that nobody was injured. Every video you just saw was sent to us by our viewers. If you want to have your video featured in a future episode, send it to us using the link in the description.